For more on this, I want to bring in Lt Col Tony Shaffer. He's the president of the London Center for Policy Research, and he's a CIA-trained former senior intelligence officer as well. Tony, good to have you with us, sir.
It's always great to be here with you. Thanks for having me.
It's amazing that something like this could even happen, isn't it? What was your reaction to hearing that such an important piece of our military arsenal just crashed and a pilot had to eject here in America?
Well, I'm not surprised because the F-35 has been problematic, and just recently, within the last 24 hours, more has come out just on the F-35 itself. And notably, that this is probably the most expensive weapon system ever, Vince. I mean, we're spending, as you just said, a lot of money on it. Yet the availability rate, and these are combat aircraft supposed to be ready to go, are only 55%. That is to say, at any given time, you only have about half the aircraft ready to go for any number of technical problems. And when this one went down, the mystery of how they couldn't even find it to begin with, I mean, that on itself is just a problem. But then the problematic nature of the aircraft, and apparently these were the Marine version, which have they have to use special crayons to fly them. No, I'm kidding. That's a joke. I'm only joking about that. Don't get upset with me now. But the fact is that's a special aircraft that actually has the ability to land on the assault ships and take off.
Right. It's got vertical takeoff.
Vertical takeoff, right. So that's an order of magnitude more complex than a normal F-35. So
yes,
when it went down, I can't say I was all that surprised.
It's remarkable, and it comes as part of kind of a bad run for the Marine Corps because there was a Harrier crash recently in Australia. Not a Harrier, excuse me, an Osprey crash in Australia recently that resulted in the deaths of 3 Marines. Which may explain, I think, why the Marine Corps issued a stand-down order for all aviation after the crash of this F-35. Too many mishaps like this in a row, including ones that had fatal consequences.
Right. And in particular, though, the F-35, I think, really became the focus of that stand-down. The other issue that a lot of people were worried about is that the amount of code that has to go into these sort of things. Now, I'm a big fan of the A-10, and they want to use the F-35 to replace it. They want to use this to replace the F-35 to replace the F-16. A whole bunch of weapon systems which are proven effective and still on the battlefield. My concern is, literally, Vince, if these F-35s aren't plugged into a computer to do a diagnosis which can be basically sent back to the manufacturer, it will shut down. That is to say that you could be in combat, and after a certain number of hours going by in use, if you don't allow it to basically phone home, it'll automatically shut down. I don't know how that's in the interest of anybody to have.
That's really how that system works? Really, you've got to put tokens in like it's an arcade game or something? I mean, what is that? This is supposed to be a jet that our guys are using. Why would we even agree to something like that?
Because of politics. One of the reasons this thing has been so vaunted in the defense circles is because Congress has ensured that all the major districts of interest, big donors, get a chunk of the manufacturing.
That's
so this
for sure.
Is and so this thing is built literally not even here. This is built internationally. Some of the components come from overseas. So
yeah, people don't realize, I think, Tony, the extent to which what you just said is true about so much military equipment. So what happens is these giant defense contractors, the reason they have all of these lawmakers in their pocket and they get so much, uniform agreement among them is because they will build small components in every district in the country. They'll spread out basically they'll spread the wealth around, to borrow an old phrase from Obama. And that results in these lawmakers not really giving the critique to these companies that they probably should.
Right. So Brigadier General Blaine Holt, one of my dear friends and colleagues, and I were on Newsmax the other day talking about this. We have an airframe that's very effective, the F-22. It's all U.S. made, highly effective. It could be adopted to a lot of the roles they're talking about. They ended the project run just so they could switch over to this international, multifaceted, built all over the place with no real focus on how it's going to function in combat. We abandoned that air system, the F-22, for purposes of this. I think this is a version of woke military, where you're more concerned about divvying out the money than you are creating a combat system that is going to be effective to achieve military objectives. It's a very dangerous thing, and I think we're seeing some of this play out now.
Yeah. I'm looking at an old report here, by the way, to confirm what you and I are talking about. Business Insider, every U.S. state but for Alaska, Hawaii, Nebraska, and Wyoming, just 4 states. Every single U.S. state except for those 4 states has economic ties to the F-35, with 18 of those states counting on the project for $100 million or more in economic activity. And this is a report. This report, by the way, is a decade old. So my guess is some of those other states that were left out or may even be a part of it now. So that takes you inside the behind the scenes of how these deals get done and why they are preserved forever.
Yep. And that's the danger. We have focused so much on appeasing the political winds of Washington rather than going to the drawing board and effectively creating those things necessary to defend the country. And Vince, this is not going to be fixed anytime soon. We're now facing off against China. We have other nations that are challenging our ability to conduct commerce. And you don't want an F-35 to be on the front line with the very fact of what we're seeing now. And I know the Air Force is trying to go back. They've got the F-15EX that they've developed. They're trying to get some of those into service, basically updating the F-15, which is a very effective, highly dangerous platform for the bad guys, not the good guys. And that's the thing. The F-35 is dangerous, but not to the right people, Vince, and that's what we have to focus on.
That's disheartening to hear. I'm going to play some audio for you. This is the balance of the 911 call. I played a little bit of it a moment ago, but this is the pilot getting on the phone after landing in a civilian's backyard in Charleston, South Carolina, placing a 911 phone call and telling the 911 operator he's a military pilot and he needs we need to get a search crew going immediately to find this jet.
We have a military jet crash. I'm the pilot. We need to get rescue rolling. I'm not sure where the airplane is. It would have crash landed somewhere. I ejected.
Isn't it remarkable to even hear a call like that? I mean, this guy, he has to run into this house. It's like something out of a movie. He had to make a 911 call from some random guy's home.
Well, they could make it a better aircraft, I guess, because that first observer said it was a big plane. Maybe they could install a rotisserie so at least they could cook some birds or chicken or something when it crashes, get some other use out of it, for goodness sake. But yeah, look, it is out of a movie, a bad movie, and one that I don't think Hollywood would even film because it would be too incredible.
The Associated Press reports today that there are plenty of questions about the crash, notably why the plane wasn't tracked as it continued flying over South Carolina, and how it could take more than a day to find a massive fighter jet that had flown over populated, although rural areas. The Marines said that features that erase a jet's secure communications in case of an ejection, a feature designed to protect both the pilot's location and the plane's classified systems, may have also complicated the efforts to find it. So kind of that Mission Impossible outcome, which is that this message will self-destruct. Everything, apparently, including the tracking, was broken on this thing, and we were unable to find our stealth airplane for a while.
Well, these things are actually flown domestically with reflectors on them, Vince. So, I think you're right, and I think they're saying the correct thing, that this thing kind of self-destructs electronically, but it's designed to be seen while flying in domestic airspace. You can't have a stealth aircraft flying around bumping into commercial aircraft. So what I find fascinating is that they couldn't track it. And that, again, opens a whole nother door of issues that we need to examine. How can you not track something that size, even in that part of the country? It does open up Pandora's box here for asking some hard questions.
You've got to imagine that there are people at the FAA going, what? How does a plane escape our notice? And not just the FAA, but any company or airline who uses the skies is going to want to know that there is no traffic in their way as they move their planes through them.
Right. And so the answer is somebody who should have been tracking this thing down wherever it was going should have immediately tried to focus on that. And again, these things are flying around that area. There's a lot of aircraft flying around down there. That's not Charleston is not a rural area. Some of the area around it perhaps, but again, you should have very effective radar tracking this thing wherever it goes.
What role does leadership in the military play in this saga?
I think ultimately most of the problems we're seeing are from failed leadership, Vince. You can have the best technology, the best weapon systems, and complete idiots in charge, and you're going to fail. I mean, during World War II, there was a whole series of firings at the beginning of the war because they had to get rid of the incompetent, politically correct officers to win that war. And we don't have a Stormin Norman Schwarzkopf or a Joe Dufford, talked about Joe before, who's willing to go in and say, look, these are the things that are wrong. You must fix them. Most officers, like Mark Milley, the new chairman of the Joint Chiefs, did not get a good vote. 11 votes against him because there's a perception he's politically correct. Political correctness, focusing on how we can divest and ensure equity both in how we build things and who you sleep with as a determinant factor of your effectiveness in combat, is a very dangerous thing.
It's amazing. Tony Shaffer, before we let you go, I know you have an event coming up that you wanted to share some information about. Tell us, what is it?
Yeah, real quick, the Patriot Potluck Bonfire, a week from Saturday. It's at Chris and Debbie Cloud's place out in Fauquier County. You can call to RSVP 571-451-9112, 571-451-9122. I'm sorry, 9112. Don't get that wrong. And what I'm talking about today, I'll be talking about in a lot more detail, kind of going through a national security brief to the folks. The last one we did in January was highly attended. I think people would enjoy it, so I hope they come out and hope to see you there.
Okay, awesome. And let me verify as I open all this up. It looks like, yes, there is a website. If you just go to a search engine and you type in Patriot Potluck Bonfire, you will find it as the top result. Patriot Potluck Bonfire. Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, thank you very much. Always good to talk to you, sir.